Imagine your most ordinary day. You walk into a huge, brightly lit supermarket, and endless rows of long shelves open up before you. Tens of thousands of colorful packages, glass bottles, cardboard boxes, and vibrant labels scream at you from all sides, vying to be the one you choose. Your gaze glides over rows of sweet soda stretching dozens of feet, moves to shelves with fragrant shampoos, then to racks with chocolate and household chemicals. You feel like the master of the situation, an absolutely free person in a free world where everything is subject solely to your taste and your wallet. You take your smartphone in hand to check your shopping list. Perhaps it's the latest model from a popular brand for which you argued fiercely with colleagues and friends, proving its undeniable superiority over competitors. You are proud of your choice. You sincerely believe that your taste is unique and your decisions are dictated solely by your personal free will.
But what if I tell you that all this is just a grand, meticulously planned theatrical production, staged specifically to hide one terrifying truth? What if the illusion of the endless shelf is the most brilliant trick ever pulled off in human history? You argue about what's better, defend your favorite brand with foam at the mouth, voluntarily hand over your hard-earned money, without even realizing that in the end, you're paying into the same bottomless pocket. The deeper I dug into this topic, immersing myself in dry, boring financial reports and multi-page shareholder registries, the more terrifying the picture became. The official version of the free capitalist market, where independent companies battle for the consumer's attention, constantly improving quality and lowering prices, instantly crumbles to dust as soon as you look at those behind the curtains of this supposed competition.
We are accustomed to unconditionally believe that corporations Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola are sworn enemies who have been waging an uncompromising, brutal war for decades for every sip from the consumer. They spend billions of dollars on aggressive marketing, hire the world's best pop and sports stars, shoot incredibly expensive commercials to convince you that their drink is better, tastier, and more modern. They seem to us two completely different, hostile universes. But if we open the lists of their main institutional shareholders, all this age-old enmity will turn out to be just a cheap show for naive viewers. The largest shareholders of both of these giant corporations are the same investment funds, Vanguard and BlackRock. The pattern repeats with frightening precision wherever you cast your inquisitive gaze. Recall the endless and irreconcilable disputes between computer tech fans. Some idolize Apple's products for its closed, perfect ecosystem and stunning design. Others consider devices based on Microsoft operating systems the only true and logical choice. On forums, spears are broken every day. People line up in miles-long queues on days of big premieres to hand over their last savings to the corporation they consider theirs. But open the dry financial documents. Who owns the lion's share of Apple's shares? The investment giants Vanguard and BlackRock. And who quietly sits in the chairs of Microsoft's main institutional shareholders? The same funds, Vanguard and BlackRock. You buy one brand to prove your rightness and spite the other, but your money ultimately flows into one giant financial pot, managed by the same faceless people in strict, expensive suits. We see this algorithm absolutely everywhere, in every sphere of our lives. When it comes to the most precious thing, our health, the system works exactly the same, without a single glitch. On the global pharmaceutical market, there are its own unshakable giants that seem to us independent pillars of modern medicine. Powerful corporations, Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson, produce thousands of vital medicines and complex medical equipment. They compete in government tenders as the fiercest rivals,
ruthlessly fighting for huge contracts and the minds of practicing doctors. But if you trace the invisible chain of money, pushing through the thickets of complex corporate bureaucracy and tangled asset ownership schemes, you will inevitably arrive at the same names. They are all owned by the same investment giants who couldn't care less about the brand because they own the entire market itself. We naively think that we vote with our money for quality, for breakthrough innovations, for the best service and caring attitude toward the customer. But in reality, we merely obediently shift paper bills from the left pocket of the global monopolist to its own right pocket. This sweet illusion of choice is vital to them only so that we never ask unnecessary questions and continue to obediently, mindlessly consume. Colorful, bright logos, aggressive, targeted advertising, supposed brutal price wars. All this exists only in our fevered imagination and on the bright screens of our TVs and smartphones. In the real world, behind the hermetically sealed doors of luxurious Wall Street offices, no competition has existed for a very long time. And here arises the most important, sobering question. At what moment did the free market turn into a global monopoly with different logos? How did it happen that we one day woke up in a world where all roads, no matter which brand you choose, lead to the same boardroom? To understand how this global financial monopoly is structured, we will have to descend from the brightly lit supermarket displays into the sterile, emotionless corridors of corporate power. Forget all Hollywood fairy tales about secret lodges, mystical orders, hooded conspirators gathering in the half-light of ancient castles to divide the planet. In the real world, total power has no need for cheap theatrical effects, magic, or occult rituals. True power hides behind the most boring, mundane things in the world. Dry financial reports, multi-page charters of corporations, complex legal contracts, and endless spreadsheets. The main enemy of our freedom is not a cartoonish villain from comics bent on blowing up the world. The enemy is the board of directors system. Faceless, cold, calculating, and absolutely legal machine that absorbs others' assets with the methodical efficiency of a giant industrial combine. At the very top of this incredible food chain sit the so-called world owners, the famous Big Three investment funds, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. They are the chief architects of that invisible cage in which modern society voluntarily lives. They do not produce smartphones, assemble cars, develop medicines, or bake bread. They produce control. How can one manage the world market without attracting unwanted attention from the enraged public? The answer lies in the subtleties of modern shareholder law. Many people naively believe that to fully subjugate a giant transnational corporation, it is necessary to own its controlling stake. That is, to hold 50% of the shares plus one deciding share. But in the modern global economy of totally diluted capital, this rule long ago stopped working. When the shares of a huge company are divided among millions of small private investors who never in their lives attend annual shareholder meetings and are generally not interested in the company's long-term policy, it is enough for you to buy just 5, 7, or at most 10% of the shares to officially become the largest institutional investor. Holding this comparatively small but consolidated stake in your hands, you gain the exclusive right to appoint your loyal people to the board of directors. You dictate whom to fire from executive positions, whom to hire, which direction to develop the international business in, and which social agendas to aggressively support. Small, scattered shareholders are simply physically unable to unite to oppose your consolidated power. This is not economics. This is the mathematics of subjugation, the highest form of domination, built on the absolute indifference of the masses and the strictest adherence to all bureaucratic procedures. The Big Three simply buys up these decisive stakes in absolutely all significant companies in the world, turning once independent businesses into their submissive, powerless branches. But the most frightening part of this investigation begins when we try to find out who really controls these controllers themselves.
It is precisely here that the financial matrix snaps shut, instantly turning into a perfect, impenetrable trap. An impeccable mechanism of mutual complicity from which there is simply no escape. Take, for example, BlackRock Corporation, the most influential and terrifying financial monster of our time. BlackRock is officially a public company. Its shares are freely traded on the stock exchange, and theoretically any citizen can buy them. But if we open the latest registry and look carefully at who its largest, dominant institutional shareholder is, we will see the Vanguard Fund there. Common sense logic suggests that we need to go further down the chain and see who stands behind the Vanguard Fund to finally find those specific people pulling the strings of the global economy. But here the system puts an insurmountable concrete wall of legal deadlock in front of us. The fact is that Vanguard is a historically closed structure. It has no public shares on the open exchange. It belongs to its own investment funds, and these funds, in turn, are formally owned by ordinary investors. But the right to vote and real operational management of all assets is exclusively handled by the management of Vanguard Corporation itself. It results in a perfect, closed legal Ouroboros, an infinite snake eternally devouring its own tail. To make this complex structure absolutely invulnerable to any checks and antitrust investigations, the third giant enters the game: State Street Corporation. If we meticulously study State Street's ownership structure, we will be surprised to discover that its main owners are the same tireless funds BlackRock and Vanguard. And who owns the huge stakes in the shares of BlackRock and Vanguard corporations themselves? You guessed it, State Street Company. They simply own each other. For decades, they have cross-invested tens of trillions of dollars into each other, creating an absolutely closed, hermetic circle of financial power, to which ordinary mortals have no and cannot have access. No bravest journalist, no principled prosecutor, no independent investigator will ever be able to find the ultimate beneficiary here, because it simply does not exist in the usual human understanding. Power is spread incredibly evenly across the most complex corporate trusts, cross-holdings, and multi-level investment portfolios. This is a brilliant circular defense at the level of securities and official seals. If you try to attack or bankrupt one company, it will immediately be protected by the best lawyers and limitless capitals of the other two giants. They have created a perfect, immortal financial organism that exists solely for its own survival and endless expansion of its influence on our minds and wallets. Realizing this ruthless fact forces us to look at all of human history in a completely new way. Recall the lessons of history. Recall how the world was ruled before. For long millennia, people suffered from cruel kings, mad emperors, and bloody military dictators. These rulers had absolute power over their subjects. They could execute and pardon at will. They forcibly took the fruits of others' hard labor through huge taxes, tribute, and regular levies. But every single one, even the most fearsome and protected tyrant of the past, had one critical, utterly fatal vulnerability. He was a mere mortal man of flesh and blood. He had a specific physical address, a luxurious marble palace or an excellently fortified stone castle.
And when the level of pain and discontent in society reached its critical mass, the people grabbed pitchforks and torches. People could rise up, breach the heavy palace gates, overthrow the ruler, and forever destroy his unjust empire. World history knows hundreds of such bloody examples, when seemingly absolutely unshakable state power collapsed in just a few days under the furious onslaught of an enraged, desperate crowd. A dictator of the past could be seen with one's own eyes. One could boldly look him in the face. He could be officially accused of crimes. He could be physically removed from power. But how, pray tell, can an ordinary person overthrow a legal entity? How can one behead a many-faced corporate monster that fundamentally has no single head, but only an endless, constantly updating list of subsidiaries, offshore accounts, and mutual investment funds? You cannot come with an angry protest to the corporation's building and demand justice, because the high-rise is merely tinted glass, cold metal, and soulless concrete. The real power hasn't lived there for a long time. True power today is reliably hidden and diluted across millions of lines of complex computer code. It is concealed in the flickering servers of strictly guarded, closed data centers and in thick folders of corporate contracts, every comma in which was certified by entire armies of highly paid lawyers. You cannot put an investment index in a prison cell. You cannot declare war on a dry shareholder registry. The global system of society management has evolved, forever ridding itself of its main historical weak link, the human vulnerability of the leader. They have built a new, completely transparent, digital and legal feudalism right under our noses. And the most terrifying thing is that this unprecedented takeover of the planet happened without a single shot, in the absolute silence of offices, with full and unconditional compliance with all laws of the free market. When we think about how global control over entire continents, sovereign states, and billions of unsuspecting people is exactly carried out, our collective imagination, by old cinematic habit, draws us grim pictures of the use of brute physical force. We imagine endless columns of heavy armored vehicles, the clanking of metal treads on cracked asphalt, infinitely marching armies of soldiers in identical faceless uniforms, armed patrols on the streets of sleeping cities, and tall concrete walls densely topped with shiny spirals of sharp barbed wire. We sincerely and naively believe that true, absolute power always rests on the fear of imprisonment, on police batons, and on the constant threat of immediate physical destruction. But those people who truly manage global world processes from their sterile high-rise offices long ago understood one extremely simple but genuinely brilliant truth. Firearms, tanks, heavy bombers, and punitive squads are an incredibly expensive, highly inefficient, and historically very unstable tool for managing human masses. Direct violence always and inevitably breeds a counter-response of even greater ferocity. It provokes blind hatred, forces people to unite in alliances, and desperately fight for their lost freedom to the last drop of blood. To manage the modern world without unnecessary noise, there is no need to kill anyone. No need to drop bombs on defiant capitals, and no need to send multi-thousand-strong troops for the bloody seizure of foreign sovereign territories. It is enough simply to quietly and absolutely legally take full, total control of those very financial blood vessels through which the money of the entire planet continuously flows. It is precisely here that the most formidable, most destructive, and at the same time absolutely invisible weapon in human history takes center stage on the world scene. This is not a super-powerful thermonuclear warhead, not a secret orbital laser, and not a deadly biological virus engineered in underground laboratories. This is a colossal computer program, a gigantic analytical system, and the super-powerful artificial intelligence of BlackRock Corporation, which bears the fairy tale but genuinely awe-inspiring, primordial, terror-inducing name Aladdin in the hearts of world financiers. The full and official name of this unprecedented-in-scale digital management system sounds like Asset, Liability, and Debt and Derivative Investment Network. This grandiose, continuously learning neural network was originally created solely to assess financial risks. But very soon, it evolved and turned into the central, all-seeing brain of the entire global capitalist economy. The scales of the daily influence and computing power of the Aladdin system are simply impossible to comprehend and contain in the ordinary human mind. In its cold, ceaselessly flickering digital depths, financial assets worth tens of trillions of dollars are analyzed, evaluated, and redistributed every day, every minute, and every second. These are astronomical, unimaginable sums that many times exceed the annual state budgets of the overwhelming majority of countries on our vast planet combined. Aladdin, like a giant, patient digital octopus, has deeply penetrated with its invisible fiber optic tentacles into the protected servers of the world's largest banks, transnational insurance corporations, state reserve repositories, and the largest national pension funds. This artificial intelligence sees absolutely every significant transaction on the globe in real time. It precisely knows where every cent is heading. It instantly calculates millions of possible market development scenarios. And most importantly, Aladdin unilaterally and categorically dictates exactly where all the money of world investors will go. It impassively points out which sectors of the global economy will receive life-giving, salvific financing and thrive, and which will be immediately, without right of appeal, cut off from all existing credit lines and doomed to a slow, agonizing death in absolute financial vacuum. How exactly does this flawless, honed to a sinister perfection mechanism of economic coercion work? Let's imagine for a moment that you are the CEO of a large, independent, and incredibly successful manufacturing company. You produce excellent, modern cars, build reliable homes, or grow quality wheat. You make a magnificent product that enjoys huge, completely deserved demand from ordinary buyers. Your high-tech factories operate at full capacity in 3 shifts, and your loyal employees reliably receive high salaries and confidently provide for their large families. You feel like the master of your destiny and sincerely believe that the immutable laws of honest, free business are always on your side. But suddenly, polite, impeccably dressed in expensive suits, consultants from the largest investment funds come into your luxurious office and insistently, with a cold, non-negotiable smile, recommend that you immediately implement in your company a new corporate agenda that these funds urgently need at the moment. They categorically demand that you radically change the composition of your board of directors according to their new quotas, that you publicly, in front of TV cameras, support certain social and political movements they need, that you completely restructure all your profitable production strictly in accordance with their new standards, even if it threatens you with colossal financial losses and complete, inevitable ruin of your business. And so you, as an honest, principled entrepreneur of the old school, categorically refuse to voluntarily submit to this absurd, brazen pressure. You boldly tell the uninvited guests that your business is about producing quality goods for people, not a platform for political manipulations. And at that very moment, the invisible cage snaps shut with a deafening clang. The cold, ruthless, absolutely devoid of any human compassion computer algorithm instantly comes into play. The Aladdin system instantly registers your disobedience as a system error. No one responds to your proud refusal with angry shouts. No public threats sound in the press. No one sends armed, masked bandits to your office or corrupt investigators with an illegal search warrant. The artificial intelligence simply silently, in a fraction of a second, catastrophically lowers your corporate rating in the global, hidden from prying eyes, electronic spreadsheet. Just a few changed lines of complex software code in the gigantic database on BlackRock's protected servers, and your incredibly successful company instantly becomes toxic and radioactive for absolutely all world capital markets. This system automatically, without the slightest involvement of living, doubting operators, sends an alarm electronic signal to thousands of banks, private investors, and state funds around the world that investing money in you is henceforth categorically forbidden. That your stubborn company now carries unacceptable systemic risks. In that very same second, your securities plummet on world exchanges because soulless automated brokers begin dumping them en masse at any price. Reliable partner banks suddenly refuse to extend your vital loans under the dry pretext of a change in your risk assessment. Raw material suppliers in panic demand immediate, 100% prepayment, and your largest corporate clients hastily, unilaterally terminate long-term contracts with you to avoid in any way tarnishing their own credit ratings through risky association with an outcast company. You are left absolutely alone, in an empty office, without working capital, without salvific investments, without the slightest ability to pay salaries to your loyal workers. Your company, which was yesterday the unconditional, proud market leader, simply dies before your eyes from artificially induced total financial strangulation. You have forever lost the business of your entire life, not because you lost in fair competitive struggle for the consumer's heart, and not because your product suddenly became worse. You lost absolutely everything because you dared not to submit to the rules of the invisible masters. This is not politics. This is pure control algorithm. A mathematically precise, flawless system of suppressing others' will, against which any brilliant lawyers, independent journalists, and highest state courts are utterly powerless. Any, even the most sophisticated and complex system of total control always has its critical point of no return. That very historical moment when the masks are finally dropped, when the predator no longer sees the need to hide in dense thickets, and when the power that has been cautiously shaped in deep shadow for decades brazenly declares its indisputable rights on the open stage. For the global financial matrix, which the Big Three methodically built brick by brick, this turning, defining moment was the great global financial crisis of 2008. For the overwhelming majority of ordinary people across the planet, those terrible days remain forever in memory as an unimaginable, destructive economic catastrophe of biblical proportions. Millions of honest, hard-working citizens in an instant lost their only homes, were deprived of all their pension savings, left without stable jobs, and without the slightest hope for a bright future. Markets panicked and collapsed like houses of cards in a strong wind. Colossal banks with centuries-old histories burst with a deafening crack, and entire sovereign states found themselves on the very edge of the abyss of total sovereign default. But if we look carefully, without unnecessary emotions and with cold reason at those tragic events, through the prism of dry accounting reports, we will realize with horror one irrefutable truth. For the true world owners, That grand crisis was not at all a random catastrophe or an unforeseen, annoying glitch in the operation of a complex system. It was a brilliantly executed, surgically precise tool for the most massive, most audacious redistribution of material wealth and global world influence in human history.
When the bubble of unsecured mortgage loans, inflated to unbelievable sizes, finally burst deafeningly, and the entire gigantic world economy rapidly plunged into the dark abyss, the government of the United States of America, in a fit of uncontrollable panic, realized that it was absolutely incapable of coping with this unprecedented situation on its own. The state simply lacked either sufficient technical capacities or powerful analytical centers to quickly sort through trillions of dollars of so-called toxic, completely devalued assets that hung like dead weight on the balance sheets of collapsing banks. And it was precisely at this most critical, fateful moment that an event occurred that forever changed the course of world history, although few at the time gave it due significance. The highest leadership of the United States of America officially hired BlackRock Corporation as its chief exclusive advisor and operator for the urgent cleanup of the financial system from these very deadly, toxic assets. Realize the full scale of the paradox that occurred. The sovereign, most powerful state on the planet voluntarily, with its own hands, handed over the keys to its main printing press and to the salvation of its entire national economy into the hands of a completely private, unaccountable to voters, commercial corporation. From that very moment, it was precisely BlackRock, armed with its almighty Aladdin analytical system, that received the exclusive, indisputable right to decide which giant corporations and banks would receive multi-billion-dollar packages of government bailout and continue to live, and which would be ruthlessly put under the knife and liquidated. They did not just save the world economy at taxpayers' expense. They methodically reshaped the entire global market to their needs, snapping up ruined companies for pennies, gaining full control over entire industries, and bringing former competitors to their knees. The 2008 crisis became that very point of no return, after which the process of world monopolization acquired a completely legal, state-sanctioned status. The Big Three finally merged with the state apparatus, transforming into an invisible supergovernment whose backroom decisions carry far greater force than any official laws passed by public politicians in open parliamentary sessions. It was precisely then, on the ruins of the old economy, that a solid foundation was laid for what we today call the new normal. The true long-term goal of this impeccably constructed system is not simply banal money-making. Their goal is far grander, far more ambitious, and far more terrifying in essence. The system's goal is to ensure that the ordinary person in the near future truly owns nothing at all. The idea of absolute private property for the average citizen must be gradually but inexorably eradicated as a class. Look around, and you will see how this concept is aggressively implemented in every sphere of our lives. You are systematically, step by step, weaned off even the thought that you can be the full rightful owner of the things you use every day. Cars are no longer bought for many years. They are taken on endless leases, signing usurious contracts under which the car effectively belongs to the bank or corporation, not you. Housing becomes increasingly unaffordable for purchase, and society is aggressively pushed toward a model of lifelong, expensive renting. You no longer own music albums, do not buy favorite movies on physical media, and do not purchase computer programs once and for all. You are forced to pay for endless, constantly rising monthly subscriptions to gain temporary, easily revocable access to digital content stored on their servers. Even features in your own car, such as seat heating or navigation, are now sold by subscription and can be remotely disabled by the manufacturer at any second if you miss a payment or your credit card gets blocked. This process of total rentalization of our entire lives is not a coincidence or a fashionable trend invented for the convenience of lazy consumers. It is a meticulously planned, long-term strategy to turn all of humanity into powerless tenants in a world they do not own. The system does not need free, financially independent owners who can afford the luxury of stopping, thinking, and saying a decisive no. The system needs obedient users who are completely dependent on a constant, uninterrupted flow of payments for access to basic civilizational goods.
Humanity has been methodically and ruthlessly turned into a gigantic, obedient cash cow that is obliged to pay an endless, constantly growing monthly tribute simply for the right to exist in this digital and financial cage built for it. They have created a world in which you must constantly give them your money just so that your world turns on again tomorrow, so that your car starts and the front door to your rented apartment opens. This is the final, absolute closing of the cage, from which there is no escape. Because the walls of this prison are built not from concrete, but from your own monthly payments and credit obligations. We sincerely believe that we are unique individuals building our own destiny. But for the cold board of directors system of the Big Three, we are merely predictable units of consumer traffic, generators of cash flow, obliged to reliably replenish the balance of their investment portfolios. The official version of our unconditional freedom of choice instantly crumbles to fine dust as soon as you start reading the real lists of shareholders of transnational corporations. When you see that the entire global entertainment industry, mass media, pharmaceuticals, and gigantic food industry are controlled from the same offices, the illusion collapses forever. They have created a perfect, closed world in which all our actions benefit them. You can protest against the system by buying opposition newspapers, but the system already owns the printing press that produces them. You can refuse the products of one corporation and switch to another, but your money will still end up in the same bank account. In this game, it is impossible to win by their legal rules, because they own the very field on which the match is played, and they print the tickets to this game. This investigation does not aim to plunge you into the abyss of despair. Its main goal is to tear off the beautiful decorations and show you the bare concrete walls of that legal cage which society has obediently built for itself over many decades. It is impossible to attain true freedom while you sincerely believe that you are already absolutely free. The first and most painful step toward liberation is the honest acknowledgement of the very fact of one's absolutely legal financial slavery.